So I wrote most of this video before NF's song Clouds came out, and the plan was to respond to a lot of the comments on my last video about why I don't like NF, and that still will happen later on in this video. But before I started filming, while I was still sort of writing the script, NF came out with a new song, Clouds, and he announced a whole new mixtape and everything, and I figured I should start off this video on a more positive note, and show, like, I'm not opposed to NF, or the idea of him or anything like that. And I want to talk about this new song, Clouds, because I like it. I think it's a big step up for him. There's one line particularly that goes, pulling the teeth in the back of my mouth is the closest you'll get to my wisdom. And I just think that's really clever. And, like, if he could do that the whole time, why did he not do that all the time then? That's a really clever line. In the last video, I criticized him even for, like, having some really dumb lines. But, like, there was one line, I think it was in Real, I don't remember, but that I said, like, this is a good line, can he do this more? And I just pulling the teeth in the back of my mouth. That's a clever line. He is doing it more, so I'm proud of him for improving. That's awesome, man. In the last video, I also criticized him for emphasizing more than the syllables that rhymed at the end of a phrase. So if only the last syllable rhymed, he would still emphasize the last two syllables, and it really peeved me off. But he's improving with that, actually. There are some lines in Clouds that have some really more in-depth rhyme schemes, and you know, one or two syllables to rhyme is not hard to do, but the more syllables you have that rhyme, the easier. I particularly like the line, I stay committed, embrace the rigid, I'm playful with it, yeah, basically, too great to mimic, you hate, you bitter, no favoritism, that's fine with me. That's good. That's really good. I wish fine rhymed with something else, like that's great with me or something like that. I don't know. He already said great elsewhere, but you know, that one word could have been changed to fit a little bit better. But other than that, like, stay committed, embrace the rigid, and playful with it, yeah, basically, that's really good. It's a huge step up for him. So I'm really excited for it. And in the last video, I criticized him because he had, like, a good rhyme scheme on one certain part of a song, but it didn't make any sense. It doesn't make the most sense, but it makes somewhat more sense. It's not just completely pulling random words out because they rhyme. At one point he says, beat selection remarkable, and, like, his beats always do slap, but they're all kind of the same sound. So I don't know if I really agree with that line, but I don't need to agree with everything an artist says to like their music. So Clouds, overall, I think is a really good song. It's a huge step up for him, and I think if he continues on this track, then he's going to keep improving, and that's just something that I really want to see for him. Honestly, the mixtape is featuring Hopsin and Tech-N9ne, and that's awesome, dude. Like, he's starting to branch out to other, not just CHH rappers, you know. And I know he did a song with Futuristic, and that was a good song. Futuristic's verse was awesome. I didn't really like NF's verse, but that's beside the point. But, like, Hopsin and Tech, all right. Hopsin is kind of just like secular NF, really, especially nowadays. Like, newer Hopsin is very similar stylistically, and Tech can just make just about any song a classic. My only concern is, like, I wonder, is Tech gonna outshine NF? I can see that happening easily. At least in Clouds, he has shown that he has the capability to keep up. Anyway, starting now, I'm going to read comments left on my last video and just respond to them, because I think some of y'all's arguments are dumb. So one person said, everyone is entitled to their own opinions. I was a teenager when rap/hip-hop was born, and I've listened to it all. Though I'm not a big fan of the new mumble rap crap, I've appreciated some music and disliked others, including Eminem. One thing I won't do, though, is trash an artist for his work. I'm not a rapper, nor am I an expert in the music industry, so I will never go on YouTube acting like I am and trash an artist that has put his or her heart and soul into their album. I guess what I'm saying is that when you can write the #1 album in the country, then you can run your mouth. Alright. So you just shared your opinion on mumble rap, did you not? Have you made a mumble rap album or topped any chart in any genre? So why would you say that you don't like it then if you yourself are not an expert? Or on the other side, how can you say you really like something if you're not an expert? You don't need to be an expert on something to be a critic. All a critic does is share their thoughts, analysis, and evaluation on a piece of work. I'm sure at some point in your life you've read a movie review. And even if it was a Roger Ebert review, who is one of the most renowned movie critics of all time, he still has never made a Hollywood movie. And yet he is respected as one of the greatest movie critics of all time. But you may say, but I didn't trash an artist like you did, though. And you're right, that is correct. You took it one step further to trash an entire subgenre and call it crap. That's your right, though. You are fully allowed to do that. I would say it is your duty as a consumer to give feedback on what is being presented to you. Your feedback may come in the form of not listening to a certain artist or genre. It can also come in the form of directly telling the artist what they need to do better. But that's the beauty of choice and free speech. I don't like NF's music, and I don't have to listen, but I want him to do the best that he can, so I give criticism so that he may improve. Someone else said, "It's easy to cherry-pick some parts of a song and criticize it. You can make Eminem look like the worst rapper that way, even though he is the GOAT." You are correct. The difference between NF and Eminem here is that M had 4 critically and collectively acclaimed albums under his belt before the greater hip-hop world started to question if he had fallen off and outstayed his welcome. And you are right that I could cherry-pick bad M lines and paint the picture I did with NF, but most of the lines I would find would be from his newer music, which most hip-hop heads consider to be subpar, both for M and for hip-hop as a whole. The difference is that M has a backlog of near universally praised music, where it would be more difficult to find legitimately bad lines. NF doesn't have that. He's still honing his craft and getting better the more that he does it, just like with any talent. I just want him to take all the time in the world with his next project to make it the absolute best that he can, so that NF and hip-hop as a whole can learn and grow. Another difference between these two is that Eminem came up in the rap world with the respect of the underground in a way that NF never had. Now, if you don't know, there's a big difference between underground and indie. Indie means you're not on a label, and usually means you're not a prominent figure in hip-hop, though not necessarily. Like, Chance the Rapper was not on a label forever, and, I mean, look at him. Macklemore, when he blew up, wasn't on a label either. Underground, on the other hand, connects to hip-hop culture beyond the production of the music itself. It's the difference between your friend from middle school who makes music and the rap battles in 8 Mile. The school kid is indie, 8 Mile is underground. And this is sort of a drastic difference and not a fully accurate example, it's just a simple way to describe it without getting into the nitty-gritty. Indie and underground aren't necessarily separate, but can be. And you can be both indie and underground, and you can also be just one or the other. To be connected to the underground means that you are active in the community. And many artists stop being underground when they blow up because they no longer need it, so they just lose touch. And I would argue this is why Eminem fell off too, because he just lost touch with the underground. NF, on the other hand, was never really connected to the underground. Around the time that he started going by NF instead of his full name, he was signed to Capital CMG, a Christian label. And there's nothing wrong with that, but Christian labels are distinctly not underground. This especially applies to Capital CMG because NF was the first rapper they ever signed. And no, Toby Mac does not count as a rapper. You may ask, okay, why does NF being the first rapper they signed prove the label isn't underground? Well, NF is white, and there's nothing wrong with that. White people are allowed to be rappers. In fact, they are often welcome. But white rappers are not hip-hop. White rappers are guests in hip-hop. This is to say, hip-hop was born out of distinctly black struggles shortly after the Civil Rights Movement. Police brutality, discrimination, gentrification, and being born in areas defined by gang violence. As both a genre and community so fully shaped by these things, white people will never fully understand in the way that black people do. This is why white rappers are guests in hip-hop. So for Capital CMG to sign a white guy as their first rapper says they are not interested in hip-hop as a culture. They want hip-hop as a business. And there's nothing wrong with wanting hip-hop for the business aspects of it, but you have to know the distinction. Equally, for NF to sign to this label was not a dumb idea. I mean, look where it took his career. But it does say that he's not looking for the support of the hip-hop community. And that is the difference between NF and Eminem. NF never strived for that world, while Eminem was so fully submerged in it. Another person said, "You actually pissed me off. But this isn't the right way to get your channel to get more attention." You're absolutely right. This is not the way to get more attention. Lucky for me, I wasn't going for attention. My goal is to critique so that hip-hop may improve, because I am deeply in love with it. It's not an attempt to get attention for clout, it's a love letter to my genre. Another person said, "I have listened to a lot of hip-hop and still think NF is great." Awesome! I don't mean to shame anyone out of listening to NF. You are allowed to like whatever music you want to like. And that's one thing I don't think I made clear enough in my last video, and I apologize for that. I'm not trying to get anyone to stop liking NF. I don't want to take a career away from him. First off, I clearly don't have the fan base to do that. And second, as I said in the last video, nothing I said was meant to be an attack on Nate Feuerstein, or however it's pronounced. I don't know how to say his last name. I apologize. I actually have deep respect for him as a person. He's gonna be a dad soon, and I am so excited for him. My point is, keep liking NF. Don't let my opinion change yours, because that's all it is, an opinion. This is a new comment, actually, left like 7 hours ago, and I just saw it, actually. And I think it's really interesting. This guy says, I don't dislike NF personally, but I think his rhymes are pretty boring and unoriginal. He can flow for sure, but his lyrics are empty and generic. He has the lyrical depth of early Linkin Park. Everything he says is pretty vague and can apply to anyone, so his fans can kinda insert themselves in his music. I think he's a great role model as far as rappers go, and seems like a genuine good dude, but his music is super generic and all sounds the same to me. And I had a theory that NF is rap music for people who don't like rap. I Google around a bit and confirm pretty much that. Most of his fans don't like rap music, but they like NF. I think that's an interesting observation. As far as people that I know that like NF, that's generally the consensus, is they don't really listen to rap a ton, but they really like NF. There are obviously a few outliers. I know a couple people that are, really into hip-hop that like NF. But generally, based on the people that I know, that's true. A lot of it is people that grew up listening to the Christian radio stations, Christian contemporary music, and they discovered NF in the last few years, and they love him. So that makes sense. I agree that his lyrics are boring, unoriginal, and don't have a lot of lyrical depth. I disagree with the empty and generic part, though. I don't think he necessarily keeps it vague enough that it can apply to anyone. Maybe with some songs, but overall, I think he is very clearly talking about his own struggles, and I think it's specific enough that it wouldn't apply to anyone. Maybe that's just me, though. Again, you are entitled to your opinion. I don't necessarily agree, but you are fully allowed to think what you think. Another person said, all I got from your video is that his songs need a little fixing here and there, like all songs do. I agree we need to learn to progress, but you said his music was trash. I was expecting something deeper, like talking about the message of his music, for example. To only talk about the minor problems in someone's music and then qualifying the whole music as trash based on that seems like you didn't get his music to begin with. I disagree with you. I think with hip-hop specifically, technique, the presentation of it is so core to the genre. It's what the music is built around too, that I don't think you can just call those little things, and especially if they were little things, then they would have been fixed. I think these things should be obvious enough that any rapper should see it and say, okay, no, yeah, I need to change that before recording it and putting it out there. I'm not even an expert of the genre. I am a student of hip-hop first, and I really think that anyone who has any interest in it would know these things. And there's more to music than just the message, too. Message is a big, important thing, right? I fully agree with that. But I think you can't call the message the central thing of any music. I mean, look at Bohemian Rhapsody. Can anyone honestly tell me what Bohemian Rhapsody is about? No! Everyone has their own interpretations, but no one really knows what it's about. And it's so legendary because of the presentation, because of all of the fine details in it. I get that's an entirely different genre, but the point is that message is important, but it's not what makes music good or bad. You say later on in your comment, people are sick of the form, we want the content. And that's great, that's good. There are other rappers that also do this, though, also with the form. I think to say you're sick of the form is to say you're sick of hip-hop. There are other rappers who have the great form that also have the content and the message in there. Okay, so I recorded all of that and I was done with the video, and then I just got a couple more comments that I need to respond to. One person said, before making a video about if a rapper is good or not, you need to open your mind and stop saying about the types of rap you listen to. LOL. Hip-hop is hip-hop. There is not type. It's a way to express yourself. My computer needs to shut up because it made a little Anyway, that's all the comment you need to hear. What do you mean there's not types of rap? Do you mean there aren't subgenres? Because that is blatantly false. For instance, I'm gonna play 3 different clips of 3 different songs for you right here, and I want you to tell me, if you can honestly tell me these sound the same, then you need new ears. Let me show you.
Back to these bullets, it's back to the top of my Mac, all in all of you running. Just another case of that OPTA. Oh man, school I wrote notes to quote from Shakespeare and other types of rhymes to show you that I care.
Do those three songs sound the same to you? Because they're very clearly individual subgenres. There are different types of hip-hop, just as there are different types of any music, and every genre has subgenres. You're right, there are different ways to express yourself, and people choose different forms. You say later in your comment, stop spreading hate. If you think he's bad, prove it by becoming good. What does me being good have anything to do with his quality of music? The quality of music that I make does not affect the quality of music that he makes. But you say that's how rap works, not just by sitting in a chair with an iPhone camera and a mic and explaining how it's done. First off, I recognize my camera is bad, but I feel like iPhone cameras are actually better than my laptop camera. I don't know. But that's how diss tracks work, sure. I'm not trying to make a diss track. I feel like diss tracks are entirely for the fame of it, or for the clout. I don't need the clout. I'm trying to break down both for education and as a love letter to my genre, as I've said a million times earlier in this video. Goodness gracious, come on, man. Another person said, art is all about the aesthetic experience it affords. If you're seriously willing to ditch the experience and instead get hung up on technicalities, then there's something wrong. That's the end of the comment. You could say that about anything. You could say that about cars, right? I'm not super into cars, but I enjoy looking at a cool car, and if a car sounds really cool, then like I'll be like, oh, that's cool, right? That's an aesthetic experience, right? But a mechanic, may look at a certain car that I think looks really cool and say, no, but it's horrible because it has horrible fuel economy, and because the engine has this flaw in XYZ, like stuff that I wouldn't know because I'm not a car person, right? Because that's not my passion, but I would just look at the aesthetic experience. But a mechanic would see that and they would get hung up on it because that's what they're so passionate about. And I feel like that's a similar thing here. You can listen to it, and because it's not necessarily what you are passionate about, you can love just the aesthetic experience. But I get hung up on the technicalities because it is what I have thrown my life into, what I have chosen to be just so in love with. You can say this about food too. It's like, I can enjoy mac and cheese and it tastes good and it's an aesthetic experience. Whereas Gordon Ramsay could have some Kraft mac and cheese and say that it's garbage because the technical skill in it, and I cooked the noodles wrong, and all these different things where it's like, I don't care about the technicalities in it. I just want to eat it because it tastes good. An artist may paint a painting and I'll look at it and say, that looks cool. Like, I appreciate their color choices and the color palette they used, whereas another painter may look at it and say, no, they made these horrible mistakes with the technique and their brush strokes are garbage and all these different things, and I wouldn't know. I don't care about it. That's not what my passion is, and I think it's a similar thing here. You are allowed to enjoy NF for the aesthetic experience, but that's not all that music is. That's not all that art is. I am willing to get hung up on the technicalities because the technicalities are what make it great. Not just good or fun for the aesthetic experiences, but the technicalities are the difference between a good song and a great song. Anyway, now I'm gonna be done with the video. I couldn't ignore those comments. Oh man. Thank you for watching that video and getting through this one. Oh my Lanta. I didn't think that video was gonna blow up as much as it did. It only got like 1,000 views or whatever, but it's still more than I have ever gotten before, and not because I wanted clout, it just happened. I made that last video because I would say that I don't like NF, and people would say, why don't you like NF? And I was tired of explaining it, so I'd just say, hey, I made a YouTube video about it, and I'd send them the link. I wasn't even trying to get clout. I just didn't want to have to explain it all the time. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. I appreciate it. The like ratio in this video is going to be just as bad as the last one, isn't it?